I thought it was just a check-in call, but when my daughter forgot to hang up, I heard everything. Dad's old, he's just a burden now. Putting him in a nursing home is for the best. Then my son-in-law added, if we sell this house, we'll have enough for that villa in the mountains. I didn't get angry. I just quietly started preparing. 2 weeks later, they returned from Hawaii, suitcases in hand, smiles on their faces. But the door wouldn't open. The locks had been changed. On the doorstep was a folded piece of paper. And when they read it, I knew, for the first time in their lives, they were no longer in control. This was just the beginning. You won't believe what happened next. Before we go any further, make sure to follow the channel and let me know what you would do if you were in my position. The phone rang just as I put my fork down on the plate, brushing away the last crumbly remnants of the final piece of chicken pot pie. It was Anna's recipe. That crust. She made it by hand, never using a rolling pin, and it was always just crispy enough, just tender enough. As for me, despite following the exact steps she'd left in her notebook, I could never get it quite right. I'm not a great cook, but I'm learning, because after Anna passed, the kitchen that had once been warmed by her hands suddenly felt cold, and I couldn't bear that emptiness. I had eaten this pie for 3 consecutive meals. The same mild spice, the same blend of savory and sweet, the same shredded chicken and green peas mixed into a rich, creamy sauce. But with each passing day, it felt like a way to hold on to a little more of Anna that lingered in this house. I stood up, carried the plate to the sink, and let the warm water run gently over it. My left hand ached slightly, a souvenir from a fall down the stairs 2 winters ago. But I still scrubbed every corner of the plate clean. Anna hated leaving dirty dishes overnight. A clean dinner means a peaceful sleep, she used to say. The phone rang a second time, a deep, old-fashioned ring, coming from the landline on the small table in the hallway. That phone had been here since 1991, when we first moved into this house, a traditional wooden home, nestled among the vibrant red maple trees that lined Willow Lane every autumn. I wiped my hands on the old kitchen towel hanging on the back of a chair. It was a pale cream color with red-stitched trim, embroidered with a few cardinal birds that Anna had made one rainy afternoon. Nearly 30 years later, it still held a faint scent of vanilla. I picked up the receiver and looked at the screen. A name appeared. Claire. My daughter. My only child. I'm here, I said, trying to keep my voice normal, though my spine had suddenly tensed in a strange way. Dad! Her voice rang out, bright and lilting like a silver bell. I'm just calling to see how you are. Have you been sleeping well? I've been sleeping fine, I replied, my eyes drifting to the kitchen window. It was starting to get dark outside. The first streetlight flickered on at the top of the slope, casting long shadows through the trees. The weather's changing, getting colder, but I'm well. Remember to dress warmly, okay? Claire said, her tone seemingly considerate. It gets chilly at night this time of year, especially for someone living alone. I didn't answer right away. My gaze fell upon the rocking chair by the fireplace, the one where Anna used to sit and knit scarves every evening. The half-finished gray-blue wool scarf was still folded neatly in the wooden box beside it. I had never put it away, nor could I bring myself to wash it. Once, I sat there, trying to rock the chair as she used to, but I had to get up after only a few minutes. It wasn't a chair anymore. It was a piece of the person I loved. Dad, are you listening? Claire asked. I snapped back to reality, clearing my throat. Yes, I'm here. We continued to chat for a little while longer. Claire talked about Ethan being busy with his real estate work, mentioning they had just attended a charity fundraiser downtown. I just listened, nodding a few times, saying a few words. It wasn't that I wasn't interested. It was that something in her voice felt distant. I wasn't sure when it had changed. Maybe after the wedding or after their honeymoon in Hawaii that year. Maybe it was when she moved into the spacious three-bedroom penthouse and started calling people like me the previous generation. "Well, I have to go to a Zoom meeting now," Claire finally said. "Just wanted to call for a bit. I love you." "I love you too, honey." I put the phone down, but I didn't turn away immediately. A strange, faint static sound was still buzzing from the earpiece. I frowned slightly, picking the phone up again, and that was when everything inside me stopped. I had just placed the phone back in its cradle when I froze. That strange static was still buzzing on the other end. I raised the receiver to my ear again, and in that exact moment, I heard Claire's voice. No longer sweet, no longer meant for me. "God, calling once a week is still such a pain," she sighed. "He actually believes I care." A beat of silence. Then Ethan's voice came through, low and steady, with a chilling edge. "That's what keeps him compliant. One phone call, a few questions, and the old man will lie down like a puppy. Just keep it gentle, Claire." I stood motionless, the receiver held loosely to my ear. The kitchen was silent. Only the pale yellow light from the stove hood illuminated Anna's apron, still hanging quietly on the back of the cabinet door. Claire let out a soft laugh, a short, sharp sound like a full stop. "As long as he doesn't get suspicious, we're fine. I've already checked. The resort south of Asheville has a long-term medical care program. Private rooms, nurses, the whole package. He'll be fine." Ethan cut in. "Fine? Are you going to tell him you're selling the house behind his back? Or just wait until he's moved out and then do it?" "I'm not an idiot," Claire replied, her voice sharp as ice. "That house can't just sit there. We still have the down payment for the new place in Blue Ridge. If we don't get the money this month, the developer will cancel the contract." I heard every word, so clearly that I could picture their faces, sitting somewhere hundreds of miles away, maybe in their car or at home, sipping wine while they planned how to clean up their past. "He lives alone, eats frozen meals 3 times a day, and talks to a few old neighbor ladies," Ethan said. "Anyone would think he needs someone to look after him. He just hasn't admitted it to himself yet." Claire was quiet for a moment. Then, "A daughter putting her father in a nursing home doesn't sound good, but a resort with premium medical care is a different story. People will understand." I still said nothing. I didn't hang up. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. I just stood there as if I'd been kicked in the chest but still had to force myself to breathe evenly. I looked around, searching for something to hold on to. My gaze landed on Anna's old apron. The embroidered trim had faded. A few threads had come loose at the hem, as frayed as my trust was at that moment. That apron had been with her through all her years in the kitchen, from when Claire was little, clinging to her mother's leg, to the last day Anna stood by the stove, her hands trembling as she tried to make me a pot pie for Thanksgiving. Claire knew that. She knew every memory tied to this house. And yet, I lowered the receiver as gently as if too much force could shatter all the memories in this house. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. Something inside me had just changed. Something very quiet, but very certain. That night, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't turn on the radio. I just sat in the kitchen, listening to the ticking of the wall clock and the faint whistle of the wind through the cracks of the old window. After a long silence, I stood up. Not to get more pie or pour some tea, but to open the bottom drawer of the corner cabinet, a drawer I had rarely touched for years. Inside, everything was just as I'd left it. A faded blue metal box, old and embossed with a floral pattern from the 80s. Inside were yellow documents, neatly clipped into separate stacks. I took out the first stack, Claire's tuition receipts from her freshman year to her last year of university. Over $48,000 in total. I remembered every semester. Each time I made a transfer, I would print a copy for myself, underline it in red pen, and add a small note in the margin. Spring semester, paid in full, Worked 4 extra Saturday shifts, 2 Sunday shifts. Third-year tuition. Paid 2 weeks early. Sold the lawnmower, postponed the Tahoe vacation. I reread each line as if it were a record of devotion. Silent, meticulous, unpraised. And it didn't need to be. Then I flipped to the next section, a smaller stack of papers tied with an old ribbon. Inside were things Claire had written, drawn, and given me when she was little. I could never bring myself to throw them away. There was a clumsy drawing in wax crayon, a picture of 3 people, me, Anna, and Claire, standing next to a house with a red roof. In the sky was a smiling sun. There was a yellow sticky note. I will study hard, grow up fast, and earn lots of money to buy Mom and Dad tickets for a cruise. And then, I saw the birthday card from when Claire turned 9. She had made it herself, gluing green construction paper onto a folded piece of cardstock. The words were written in black marker, the handwriting a bit wobbly but careful. When you and Mom get old, I will take care of you. I promise I will never let you be sad and alone. I read it slowly. Once, then again. I still remembered that year. Claire had hidden the card in my desk drawer, along with a caramel candy. She had said, I don't have money for a gift, but I have a promise. I placed the card on the table next to the stack of receipts. The yellow light cast down, making the ink fade a little. But the promise was as vivid as if it were made yesterday. And yet, just a few hours ago, I had heard that same voice. Cold, calculating, planning how to move me to a strange place to take this house as an asset. I wasn't angry, I wasn't sad, I just felt awake. Some promises people forget over time, but I remembered them more clearly than ever. After folding the birthday card and placing it back in the box, I still didn't get up. There was something else I needed. I turned and opened the low wooden cabinet next to the living room window. In the bottom drawer, behind stacks of wedding albums and old mortgage papers, was a thick wooden box with a bronze latch that had turned a greenish blue with age. The box Anna used to call the place where we keep the most important things. A gentle scent of potpourri and old pine wafted up as the lid popped open. Everything inside was still neatly arranged by her from years ago, and I had never been brave enough to touch it. First was the half-finished knitted scarf, a gray-blue color, the kind of soft wool Anna only used when the weather turned cold. The 2 knitting needles were still stuck in the edge of the scarf. The stitches drooped as if waiting for a familiar hand to continue. Anna used to say, knitting a scarf is like raising a child. Row by row, stitch by stitch, section by section. You shouldn't leave it unfinished. I placed it on my lap, then flipped through her old, worn-out cookbook, its spine broken. The first pages were recipes for chicken soup, pot pie, chocolate pudding. On the middle of page 37, a line was handwritten in blue ink. Cinnamon apple pie. Claire likes the crust crispy and the filling a little tart. I paused there. My finger rested gently on the name Claire. Anna had a way of remembering everything about her, from how she hated carrots to the fact that she would only fall asleep if a story was read to her in a low voice. There was nothing she didn't save, even if it was just in small details like that. I put the book down and saw a crayon drawing, one Claire made in kindergarten. A woman with long brown hair wearing an apron, smiling widely. Beside it, in childish print, Mom is the most beautiful. Anna had kept that drawing for 30 years, glued to the cover of a notebook, carefully laminated like a treasure. I leaned back in the chair, rested my head against the back, and closed my eyes. I remembered clearly the day Claire said she wanted to have her dream wedding, an outdoor ceremony at a resort on the Florida coast, with lanterns, a high-end rented wedding dress, a makeup artist, and a photographer for the entire week. The honeymoon was in Hawaii. I had told her, I can manage $5,000, maybe $8,000 if I really push it. Claire cried, genuinely cried, and said this was her only chance to have a perfect memory. I didn't ask any more questions. I just nodded. Then I worked weekends for the next 6 months for a contractor friend, installing wood floors, carrying planks up to the second story, getting paid in cash. At the wedding, during our dance, Claire whispered, "You're the best father in the world." I believed her, completely. Believed it as if the bond between a father and daughter could never fade with time. After the wedding, Ethan lost his job. They moved into my house, saying it was just for a few months. I didn't charge rent, didn't split the bills. I covered everything: electricity, water, food, even supplements. Once Ethan said, "Uncle Ed is the most generous man in all of Asheville." Claire hugged me. "Don't worry, Dad, we'll pay you back." I still have the receipt for Ethan's financial certification course, over $3,200, which I paid for directly. Their anniversary dinner last year, $180 at a famous steakhouse downtown. Ethan said they deserved to celebrate. Now they both have stable, high-paying jobs, but they never talked about moving out. They certainly never mentioned paying me back. And they definitely never mentioned the promise from years ago. That night, I stood up and went to the upstairs bedroom, where Anna used to read every evening. I opened the bottom drawer of the nightstand and pulled out the old property deed. Edward and Anna Whitmore, purchased in 1999. No co-owners, no mortgage, no one else on the title. Now, only one person remained. Only me. The only one who still remembered every promise that others had forgotten. Claire used to be such a gentle child that just looking at her could soften anyone's heart. She loved following her mother around the kitchen or sitting for hours on the rocking chair, listening to Anna tell fairy tales. Once, she drew me with a paper chef's hat holding a wooden spoon. Underneath it said, "Dad is the best cook in the world, even if he burns the chicken a little." Anna used to say, "Claire was born with a soft heart. She's so compassionate she'd beg me not to kill an ant that bit her." I used to believe that would stay with her for life. But the Claire of today was not the Claire of back then. The change came slowly, like an ink stain spreading on paper. It was unclear when it started, only that it had spread everywhere. After marrying Ethan, Claire moved into a luxury apartment complex near the city center. The first time I visited for dinner, she mentioned her sister-in-law, Ethan's brother's wife, 5 times in 10 minutes. Amber has a vacation home in Montana. Amber just opened a facial spa. Amber was just promoted to regional director. I just sat there, quietly eating my salad. The old Claire didn't care what anyone did or had. But living in a family where success was measured by cars and wedding rings, Claire seemed to feel the need to keep up. Ethan lost his job not long after the wedding. They told me he was taking a break to reevaluate. I never asked for more details. I guessed the truth, but I thought, not everything needs to be said out loud. I used to believe that sometimes kindness was enough to keep people together. They moved in with me that year. No rent, no splitting the electricity bill, no contributing to groceries. I paid, and I didn't mind. At first, Claire often said thank you. She still hugged me every time I came home from the supermarket, still baked on weekends, still asked what movie I wanted to watch. But gradually, those things disappeared. As if thank you was no longer necessary when duty had become the default. Claire started talking like someone else. "Dad, we should renovate the living room so we have a decent place if guests come over. Don't you think this sofa is a bit old? I think this house could increase in value if we invest in it the right way." I still listened. I didn't object. But I began to understand. Claire no longer saw me as she used to. I was no longer the father who tucked her in every morning. No longer the one who walked through the snow to buy the box of crayons she wanted. No longer the one Claire whispered, "You're the best," to while resting her head on my shoulder during the wedding dance. I was just a part of Claire's living space, a part that no longer upgraded her image. I didn't blame Claire, because I knew that in a world where a person's worth is measured by things they can post online, something as quiet and enduring as a father's love is often categorized as outdated. Perhaps Claire still loved me in some way, but that love was now only enough for one phone call a week and a secret plan to move Dad to a place with full-time nursing care. I thought of that unfinished wool scarf, row by row, stitch by stitch, section by section. Claire was the row of wool Anna and I had woven for 30 years. But perhaps at some point she had cut the thread connecting her to us and knitted herself a new form. A clean, bright form, with no room for anything that didn't fit her vision. On Monday morning, Asheville was shrouded in mist. I wore the old wool coat Anna had bought that one winter and drove alone to Rosewood Avenue, a red-bricked street leading to a quiet office district on the west side of the city. Lawyer Henry Godwin's office was in a two-story house with a tiled roof and an ivory-white facade. A wooden sign hung next to the door. Godwin and Associates, Housing and Estate Law since 1976. I had been here once before, almost 3 years ago, right after Anna passed. The room was exactly the same. Polished brown leather chairs, neatly arranged bookshelves, and an old framed photo of Henry with his father, the founder of the firm. Henry shook my hand, his eyes friendly but with the cautiousness common to those who handle sensitive matters. "Edward," he said, "we haven't seen each other since Anna's funeral. Is everything all right?" I gave a slight nod. "It's fine, but I want to ask about a few things again." We sat down. I placed a copy of the old property deed on the table, the kind of paper with typewritten letters from 1999. Henry took it, put on his metal-rimmed glasses, and flipped through each page as carefully as if he were handling his own assets. "The original is still in our archives," he said. "I'll cross-reference it right now." He opened his computer and entered the file number. Just a few minutes later, he nodded in confirmation. "Edward, this house was jointly owned by you and your wife from 1999 to 2022. After Anna passed, with a valid death certificate and no separate will, full ownership transferred to you, in accordance with North Carolina state law." I said nothing, just nodded slowly, as if confirming it to myself. Henry leaned forward, his voice dropping to emphasize his point. "No one, not even your own child, has any legal claim to this house unless you grant them power of attorney. Without a transfer agreement, without your signature, nothing can be done. Unless you are declared legally incompetent or you voluntarily hand it over." I looked him in the eye. What if they think I'm getting senile, not of sound mind? Henry raised an eyebrow. "They would have to prove that in court, and you don't seem senile at all." I let out a soft laugh. Not a humorous one, but the laugh of a man who had known something for a long time and just needed confirmation. "Good," I said, standing up. "I'm not so old that I've forgotten who owns this house." Henry walked me to the door, still with that faint lawyer's smile, not taking sides, not objecting, just silently verifying. Outside the office, I stood on the steps for a few seconds. The rain had stopped. Asheville was still damp and cold, as it always was in October, but I felt lighter, not because I had just protected a house, but because I had just reaffirmed something more important. I was still in the driver's seat of my own life. I stopped at an old cafe near the square. I ordered a strong espresso, took out my phone, and reopened the list of real estate agents I had been researching for the past few days. In silence, every night since that phone call. There were dozens of names, but one always stood out. Derek Hall, a senior agent at Sierra Ridge Realty. Success rate of selling within 15 days, 94%. Number of homes sold over $800,000 in the past year, 26. Client feedback: efficient, discreet, and doesn't waste time. I called him at 1:10 p.m. A young, crisp male voice answered after just one ring. Derek Hall speaking. My name is Edward Whitmore. I want to sell my house within 10 days. It's in the hillside area of Asheville. A private transaction, no family involvement, no for sale sign. I'll pay the full commission if you handle it cleanly. There was a silence of less than 2 seconds. Then he replied with an interested tone, I have an opening at 3:30 this afternoon. I can come to you. Are you available? I looked at my watch. 3 hours to prepare. Yes, the address is 42 Maple Ridge Road. At exactly 3:30, a silver SUV pulled up to the gate. Derek stepped out with the polished demeanor of someone who doesn't need to prove himself. A white shirt, a light brown blazer, neatly combed hair, holding an iPad and a leather-bound notebook. We shook hands. I gestured to the door, no lengthy invitation needed. He walked in as if he had worked in this house before. Derek said almost nothing for the first 10 minutes. He just walked, quietly, observing every detail. The seam in the hardwood floor where I had sealed a draft last winter. The walnut kitchen cabinets I had built myself from Anna's drawings. The vaulted ceiling, where I had to hire scaffolding for 3 days to install the lighting system. I'm guessing this is solid oak flooring? He finally asked, his hand lightly touching the wood. I ordered it from Georgia. Kiln-dried for 12 months, installed in February 2000. And the house was built in 1999. I drew the plans and supervised the construction myself. Some parts, like the cabinets, the doors, I made. Derek nodded, like an expert confirming the accurate conclusion of a peer. He began taking notes and photos of each area. No noise, no empty compliments, just efficiency and focus. Based on the structure, location, maintenance, and design, this place could close for over $900,000 in the current market. If you agree to a quick sale through an investment group I represent, they can make an offer within 48 hours and wire the money immediately after a basic inspection. I wasn't surprised. I had anticipated the number. But there was one thing I needed to confirm. Are any renovations required? I don't want to tear things down, replace the countertops with a modern style, and deal with more hassle. This group specializes in buying homes as is. They like authenticity, especially with owner-built, well-maintained homes. They don't need a loan, they don't negotiate on price, they just need clear legal documents. I nodded. I've already confirmed the paperwork. The house is in my name. I've opened a separate bank account. I just need you to handle the rest. Derek smiled. You're my favorite kind of client. After he left, I drove to Summit Valley Bank, a smaller bank than the major branches, but known for its discretion and personalized service. I opened a new account, solely in my name, with no joint owners and no designated beneficiaries. The teller, Melissa, asked, Would you like to receive statements by mail or electronically? I looked at her for a moment and replied, No need to send anything. I'll come in to check myself. I withdrew a portion from a long-term savings account, a fund Anna had set aside as our rainy day fund for old age. Now I used it to make a down payment on a small apartment at Silver Creek Residences, a quiet retirement community with plenty of greenery near the library and a community center. I didn't need much, just a 2-bedroom place, enough to live in and enough to keep a few irreplaceable things. Anna would have liked it here, I thought. And I don't need anything fancy. I just need to live, not just exist. I didn't feel sad. I felt a sense of peace. Because I knew tomorrow things would start to be different. And I would be the one making the decisions. After Derek left with the promise to send the contract by the end of the day, I stood alone in the living room, where the late afternoon sun cast pale yellow streaks through the window. The familiar room suddenly felt like a photograph of a memory. Quiet, frozen in time, and no longer mine. But what I felt wasn't regret. It was anticipation. At 8:15 the next morning, just as promised, Derek returned. This time, he brought the preliminary contract, a notary from the law firm, and 2 cups of hot, fragrant coffee. "We'll make this quick and clean," he said, handing me each stack of documents. Selling price of $890,000. No loan contingency, no repairs needed, and you get to stay for 30 days after the transfer if you need to. I nodded, took out my reading glasses, and sat down at the table. I read every line as if I were reviewing the structural design of a steel bridge. I didn't miss a single word. The notary, a woman with salt and pepper hair and gentle eyes, guided me through signing each section. The confirmation of ownership, the disbursement form, the transfer deed, the list of taxes and fees. Each signature felt like cutting a chain. Lighter, clearer. "I'll send the documents to the buyer's side this morning," Derek said. "If there are no issues, they can wire the funds within 48 hours. And just like that, it all began. Days 1 to 3 passed like wind through a crack in the door. The inspection team from the investment group arrived, a crew of middle-aged engineers, dressed simply but working meticulously. They went through each room, opened electrical panels, checked water valves, and measured the floor's level with a laser. Not a single complaint. One of them stood in the middle of the dining room, his hand on the wooden column supporting the roof. Was the previous owner an engineer? I nodded. He did a good job. Places like this, neat, sturdy, aligned like a piece of music, are rare. I didn't say I was the owner. The feeling of being absent in my own house was both strange and interesting. Days 4 to 6, I became a man on a secret mission. During the day, I went to the bank, Summit Valley Bank, to finalize the verification steps and open a separate account for the wire transfer. They asked, "Do you want a family member as a joint owner?" I looked at them as if they were speaking another language. "Not necessary," I replied. In the afternoon, I returned to the Silver Creek residences. I made the official down payment for the third-floor apartment, east-facing, with just enough morning light. Anna always preferred sunrise to sunset. At night, I sat in the old leather chair in my study, considering each item I would take with me. Our wedding photo, Claire's albums, Anna's handwritten cookbook, the silver tea set my grandmother left me. The things I couldn't take. I photographed them and saved them in a separate folder. Things I kept in memory. Days 7 to 9, a sense of calm returned to my actions. I woke up early, drank coffee as usual, but this time there was no bitter taste in my throat. I mopped the floors more thoroughly than usual, as if clearing the way for a new chapter. I went out to the backyard and trimmed the hedges that Anna had planted the first year we moved in. Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor across the street, saw me busy and asked, "Are you doing some renovations?" "Oh, just a little fixing up," I said, evasive, as if the plan wasn't ready to be revealed. Day 10. I wore the charcoal-colored suit Anna had picked out for Claire's graduation. It wasn't a funeral suit. I was still alive. Very much alive. The title company's office on Main Street was flooded with early morning light. The buyer was represented by a sharp female lawyer who checked every item. Derek was like a conductor, orchestrating everything in silence. "We're at the final signature, Mr. Whitmore," the notary said, placing the last set of documents down. I picked up the pen and looked down at the words. Full transfer of ownership for the property at 42 Maple Ridge Road. Price, $890,000 US. Payment, cash, no loan. Time frame, 10 days. I signed. No trembling, no regrets. Derek pulled me aside after all the formalities were complete. He placed a light hand on my shoulder. "You know," he said, "working with you reminds me why I chose this profession." I didn't reply. I just looked into the distance, towards the road back to my old house. As of tomorrow morning, it would no longer be my home. But in my wallet was the newly printed transfer confirmation, $890,000, which would be ready in a few days. And in my mind, a plan was entering its climax. Claire and Ethan would be back in 3 days, and what they would find would not be the senile old father they imagined. After signing the contract this morning, I didn't return with a sense of victory. I had 30 days to move my things, get organized, and hand over the keys. But this afternoon, I just wanted to walk through each room one last time, with the clarity and quiet needed to say goodbye. Not to the house, but to the memories. I started in the living room, where Anna's rocking chair still sat tilted by the window. Every afternoon, she would sit there, her unfinished knitting draped over her lap, her hands gliding over the needles as she told Claire fairy tales. The last time the chair creaked was the last day she had the strength to sit up. I sat down, placed my hands on the armrests, and let it rock gently in the breeze. Then, the kitchen, the heart of this home. I stood among the walnut-colored wooden cabinets I'd installed myself in 2004, touching the stone countertop where Anna used to knead dough. On the high shelf, the jar of cinnamon powder was still there. The label faded, only 2 words legible. Claire's favorite. I could almost hear her voice. "Don't let the pie burn, Ed." I opened the refrigerator, then closed it. Empty. The air in here felt like it had gone through a second winter after she left. Claire's study corner still had a bulletin board with a few old papers tacked to it. A B+ essay from 11th grade. A thank you note from her science project advisor. I placed my hand on the edge of the desk, remembering the night she cried over failing biology. And Anna made her hot milk, sitting with her until late at night. No one in this house ever had to study alone. The master bedroom was as tidy as the day Anna was still alive. On the dresser was the bird wing-shaped hair comb, a gift I bought for our 30th anniversary. Every object in this room bore her mark. From the color of the curtains she chose to the bedside lamp I installed with the bulb facing the wrong way, which she refused to change, saying, "It's crooked, so I know my husband made it." I walked to the sewing room, the small room at the end of the hall. The late afternoon light streamed through the curtains, creating pale yellow streaks on the wooden floor. The old sewing machine was still there, just a little dusty. A roll of cream-colored fabric lay open, and next to it, a box of needles and thread, a spool of hemming thread still unfinished. Everything was as if Anna had just stepped out and would be back any moment. I opened the door to the backyard. The brass doorknob was cold and rough. I had carved and installed it myself back in 1999, in the middle of a windy summer. I remembered every joint because I had installed it like a promise. This house would never have a stranger's touch. We would stay here, plant trees, grow old, and watch Claire grow up. The backyard was the same. The lavender was in full bloom. The white fence had a few peeling paint spots, and the swing under the porch still swayed gently. Spring was coming, and I knew, this time, it would be the last spring I would sit here. I returned to the living room and sat on the sofa. There was no one. No sound of Anna from the kitchen. No Claire rushing home from school with her backpack. No one to say I'm home to. Just me, and a house waiting to be handed over. They can take the money, but they can't take this, I thought to myself, my eyes lingering on the faded wedding photo on the fireplace mantel. I stood up and left through the door, this time carrying nothing but a small bag and my car keys. I would be back, a few more times, to clean up, to pack each memento into boxes. But today was the first time I truly began to say goodbye. The new apartment was on the 3rd floor of Silver Creek Residences, a traditional 3-story red brick building, quiet, with morning sun streaming through the attic windows. It took me exactly 1 day to move the essentials from the old house: a suitcase of clothes, 2 boxes of books, Anna's oak keepsake box, and the small framed wedding photo. Everything else was either left for the new owner or sent to a nearby storage unit. There was nothing superfluous. No leather armchairs, no cherry wood kitchen cabinets. Just a small dining table for one, a low bookshelf, and the old armchair I brought from the garage. I placed Anna's wedding photo on top of the electric fireplace, next to a white porcelain pot with a lavender plant. Looking at it, there was a sense of peace. even if it was temporary. The first morning I woke up here, I made coffee with a cheap drip machine, drinking it from a ceramic mug with a salmon print, a gift from a food fair 10 years ago. There was no sound of Claire's car revving out of the garage, no sound of Anna's slippers shuffling in the hallway. Just the steady hum of the ceiling fan and the warm light casting onto the wooden floor from the east-facing window. I decided to go for a walk, to get to know the new neighborhood. Silver Creek was quiet, most residents being older singles or retired couples. The Japanese maple trees along the street were beginning to turn a reddish orange, their leaves littering the stone-paved walkway. About 3 blocks from the apartment complex was a small cafe called the Morning Finch, a white-painted wooden storefront with a handwritten sign in mint green chalk. It wasn't a Starbucks, nor was it some cold corporate chain. I pushed the door open. A small wind chime above tinkled softly. The cafe was cozy, with a few wooden tables and soft yellow lighting. The smell of banana bread and dark roast coffee mingled together like a familiar memory. Behind the counter, a young woman, about 25, was wiping a glass pitcher. Her hair was tied up high, and she wore a brown button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Her voice was as light as flour when she turned to greet me. "Good morning. I haven't seen you before. Did you just move in?" I nodded, walking to the counter. "I live at Silver Creek. Just moved in yesterday." "I'm Sarah," she said, smiling as she handed me a menu. "Do you prefer a dark or light roast?" I didn't answer right away. I glanced around the cafe. An elderly couple was doing a crossword puzzle. A man was reading a printed newspaper, and old jazz music played from a wall-mounted speaker. Then I looked back at her. "I came here to start over," I said, my voice not loud, not soft, just loud enough to be heard. "Alone, for the first time in my life." Sarah didn't ask any more questions. She just poured the coffee, handing it to me in a rough, gray ceramic mug with no logo, no decoration. I took my cup to a table by the window where the early sun warmed my hands and the wooden tabletop. I sat there for a long time, not reading anything, not thinking much, just sipping, letting this new, strange quietness seep into my fingertips. No one here knew who I was. No one knew I had built a house with my own 2 hands, that I had set aside my old age to pay for my daughter's tuition, that I had been treated as a burden by my own family. No one here needed an explanation from me. And that's what made this place the best start I could have chosen. The morning passed quietly. I was making tea, watching the first rays of sun filter through the window of my new apartment, when the phone rang. The caller ID, Claire. 3 short rings, then 1 long one. The screen displayed her name. I let it ring a few more times. There was something pleasant about making someone wait, especially when they once saw your presence as something they could arrange. Finally, I answered. "Dad, thank goodness I've been trying to call. Why don't you keep your phone with you?" I poured water into a glass, sat down at the dining table, still holding the receiver. I was taking care of some things at the bank, then stopped by a furniture store. Sometimes you have to change a few things after 25 years, you know. "Oh, yes, of course." Claire's voice dropped for half a second, then quickly brightened again. "I'm calling with good news. Ethan and I found a beautiful resort just outside of Asheville. Fresh air, 24/7 medical staff on standby. It's perfect for you to relax in your old age. They even have morning meditation and pottery classes." I tightened my grip on the glass. The game had officially begun. "Sounds like a vacation resort. You don't have to go to all that trouble, honey. I'm still healthy." "Dad, don't be so stubborn. This is a gift from us. You'll be much more comfortable. No need to worry about cooking, cleaning, or medications anymore." I nodded, even though I knew she couldn't see me. And when were you thinking I would move into this place?" "This weekend, Friday, which means only 3 more days," I finished for her. A short pause. Then Claire burst out laughing, as if I had just made light of something difficult to say. "You're so smart, Dad. Still sharp as a tack for an old man?" I laughed along with her, a soft, warm laugh like a father who was always proud of his child. "Well, I have a surprise for you, too." "Oh? What is it?" "Something I arranged last week. When you get back, you'll see things have changed a little." She hesitated, then laughed softly, somewhat relieved. "You're so thoughtful. You probably organized the paperwork, right? We were planning to discuss some procedures when we got back." I heard Ethan's voice in the background. "Tell him to pack light, nothing cumbersome. Just the essentials will be enough." I placed my hand on the desk drawer, where Claire's birth certificate, a copy of her marriage license, and a full scanned copy of the house sale contract I had just signed were stored. "Yes, I'm only bringing what's truly necessary. The rest, I'm leaving for someone who values it." "That's my dad. Well, you get some rest. Ethan and I will be back on Friday. We'll talk more then. Love you, Dad." I lowered the receiver slowly, as if I had just closed a door that would never open the same way again. On Wednesday morning, I received the final confirmation from the bank. The transaction was complete. The money was in my personal account at Summit Valley Bank, and no one but me had access to it. That was the signal. It was time for the final phase. I made 3 calls. One to a locksmith company, one to a security camera installation service, and one to a custom car design shop in downtown Asheville. Each call was brief, with no haggling over price, just one single request: as quickly as possible. "We can come today if you agree to the emergency installation fee," the technician from the camera service said. "I'll pay in cash, no trouble to anyone. I just need everything done before 6 p.m. Their pickup truck arrived at 2:45 p.m., parked neatly in the driveway. 2 young men in neat uniforms stepped out with tool bags and a folding aluminum ladder. I gave them a tour of the house, pointing out the exact locations for the cameras. One at the front entrance, one at the garage, and one on the back porch, where the entire garden could be seen. "I need sharp images, infrared, and full audio recording. At least 7 days of storage." "You've chosen the premium package," the technician smiled. "Absolute security." I nodded, not smiling back. I don't want to miss a thing. While they were installing, I checked the front door. The handle was still smooth, but the lock was not. I had called a private locksmith, an older man with steady hands recommended by Derek. He arrived at 3:15, carrying a dark wooden toolbox and the quiet demeanor of someone used to doing jobs without asking why. "I want to replace all the locks. Front door, back door, and the garage door. The best you have. 3 keys, no other copies." "Did you just buy the house?" the locksmith asked as he began removing the old hardware. "Number, I just sold it." He looked up at me, about to ask more, but then just gave a slight nod. I watched him meticulously replace each lock. Every time I heard the click of a new mechanism fitting into place, I felt like I was closing an old door within myself. The old locks, which I had chosen and installed myself in 2001, now lay silent in a nylon trash bag. "I can dispose of these for you if you want," the locksmith said. "Good. I don't want anything left behind." The cameras were also nearly finished. The monitor in the study showed me every corner of the front yard, backyard, and garage. The image was so clear I could see the movements of a squirrel running by. I double-checked the camera angles and asked them to install an additional motion sensor on the left window. "I don't live here anymore, but I still want to know who comes and goes," I explained. "Do you want notifications sent to your phone? Number, just save the footage, no alarms. I prefer others to think I don't know anything." At 5:30, everything was done. The system was running smoothly. The new locks shone. The keys were handed to me in a sealed envelope. I paid in cash, adding a bonus for their speed. No one asked any more questions, and no one needed to understand. Before they left, I returned to the main entrance. There, I taped another envelope to the door. My hand trembled slightly, but my handwriting was still clear. It was a handwritten letter I had prepared the night before. Brief, but unmistakably mine. Attached to it was a set of old keys, now useless, hanging from a cloth ribbon Claire used to tie her hair with as a child. I looked at the house one last time. None of my belongings were inside. It was just a stage for the final act to play out on schedule. I got in my car, turned the key, and started the engine. On the phone mounted on the dashboard, the camera system displayed each frame. Silent, perfect, ready. As I turned off Maple Drive, I didn't look back. There was no need. The game had begun, and this time, I was the one in control. They returned on Saturday afternoon, just as planned. Ethan's shiny white SUV turned onto Maple Drive at 3:27 p.m. Through the camera camouflaged on the porch roof, I saw it all clearly. Claire got out first, still with that leisurely air, wearing a flowing maxi dress, a soft leather tote bag slung over her shoulder as if this were their weekend getaway. Ethan followed, pulling a suitcase and a box of souvenirs from the resort. I sat in my new apartment 12 miles away with a freshly brewed cup of coffee. My laptop screen showed a wide-angle view. The facade, the front steps, the main door, the entire front yard. Claire took out her key and inserted it into the old lock. I took a sip of coffee. She tried again. Then Ethan tried. The expressions on their faces began to change, from confident to confused. I saw Claire frown, then grow irritated. She tapped her hand on the door, calling my name. Ethan went around to check the side door, then the garage. Useless. Everything had been replaced. Everything was out of their reach. The footage captured the moment Claire discovered the envelope taped to the front door. She tore it down, opened the letter, her eyes scanning quickly through the lines. When she reached the last line, her hand fell limp. Then the rage hit. Claire slammed her fist against the door. "Dad, open this door right now." Ethan pulled her back, trying to stay calm, but his voice trembled too. "Let me call him. It must be some kind of misunderstanding." I saw Claire snatch her arm away, turning to scream at her husband. "What misunderstanding?" "He's sold the house. We've been kicked out onto the street." Ethan looked around, his lips pressed into a thin line. He took out his phone and tried to access their security camera app. The screen was black. Their account had been deactivated yesterday, right after the new system was installed. She started to blame him. "This is all your fault." Ethan tried to snap back. "And you're innocent, I suppose?" I leaned back, watching in silence. No satisfaction, no glee, just timely. It was time for them to face the consequences. Time for me to stop being a shadow in my own house. Claire screamed one more time. "Dad, we did this because we wanted what's best for you. How could you?" I muted the camera's audio. That was enough. I stood up, put the laptop in a drawer, and closed it. On the kitchen counter, Anna's unfinished wool scarf lay neatly in a velvet bag, next to her cookbook and the small framed wedding photo. No longer a burden, no longer a benefactor. I was Edward Whitmore, a man who knew his own worth. Ethan's SUV was still parked in front of the house they thought was theirs. They said nothing for nearly 5 minutes after reading the letter taped to the door. "The house has been sold. The money is in a safe place. I am no longer a burden, but a man living by his own worth." Claire was the first to explode. "He's crazy! He's actually gone crazy!" she screamed, pounding her fists on the door. "Open up, Dad! Open this door right now!" Ethan stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders. "Claire, calm down. We have no right to this place anymore." "Shut up!" Claire snapped. "Weren't you the one who said he was senile, that he wasn't all there? You said all it would take was a little pressure and he'd sign the transfer. So why is it like this now?" Ethan was silent. Claire's anger was consuming them both. But then he spoke, quietly, but clearly. I was laid off 6 months ago. Claire froze. What? I was fired. The bank was downsizing. I hid it from you because I didn't want to add more pressure. She stared at him, aghast. So, this whole time, you had no income? And you still went to Hawaii? Still had dinner at fancy restaurants? Still let me think everything was fine? I thought I'd find another job, but there was nothing. Claire stepped back, as if she'd been pushed. Her voice was choked, but still sharp as a knife. You're incompetent, and I was a fool to believe in you. I gave up my family, a better job, to follow you back here to live with my dad. Ethan laughed bitterly, his eyes red. And what about you? Are you ever satisfied? From the resort wedding to the spa days, the high-end rented dresses, the anniversary parties, you always had to have more than everyone else. Your father sold his entire life to fund your fantasy. Claire screamed, I did it for us. I just wanted a better life for our family. Ethan enunciated every word. You don't want a family. You want a perfect shell to show off online. But you never expected that your father, the man you thought was so easy to control, was the only one who truly lived for you. They both fell silent. There was nothing left to say. Only the evening sun fading on the steps of the old house, which no longer belonged to them. At Silver Creek Residences, Edward closed his laptop screen. The argument he had just witnessed didn't bring him joy, but it was the truth they needed to face. He stood up and poured a glass of tea. His hand didn't tremble. His eyes weren't wet. Only a single thought echoed in his mind, as solid as a landmark in a desert. My daughter needed a shock to wake up. As for me, I woke up a long time ago. The next morning I woke up at 6:30. No alarm, no one calling. Nothing to do except live. My new apartment was on the 3rd floor, high enough to see the distant mountain peaks, low enough to hear the sound of cars rolling down the tree-lined street. I pulled back the curtains. Pale yellow sunlight streamed through the glass, quietly spilling onto the light-colored wooden floor. A morning with no one to bother me. No breakfast to prepare for anyone else. No one complaining, asking for favors, or reminding me of the burdens of old age. I made tea. A bag of Earl Grey, the kind Anna used to drink in the fall. I drank it slowly, sip by sip, from a white ceramic cup with a small chip on the handle, one of the few things I brought from the old house. On the table by the window was the unfinished wool scarf. I folded it carefully, each fold neat, as if a familiar pair of hands would come back to continue knitting. Next to it was the keepsake box and the small wedding photo. Me and Anna, our hair still black, our eyes still sparkling with hope. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. Only a sense of peace washed over me. A peace I hadn't felt for the past 10 years. Yesterday, Claire and Ethan had returned. They stood before the door they thought would easily be theirs. And then, all their illusions shattered. I didn't feel gloating, but I felt relieved. As light as the first time I took off a heavy paint-stained jacket after a long day at the workshop, knowing that tomorrow I wouldn't have to go back. This morning, I wasn't Claire's dad. I wasn't the kind old man they had taken advantage of. I was just Edward, a 68-year-old man who had made many mistakes, loved too much, and lost himself. And now, I had gotten myself back. Freedom. No one could take it from me anymore. A month after the day they returned from Phoenix, I received a handwritten letter. A cream-colored envelope, the handwriting round and neat. Claire Whitmore. I sat in silence for a long time before opening it. Not because I was afraid, but because I had learned not to expect anything anymore. Inside was a folded piece of paper, stationery with a faint pattern on the edge. The kind Claire used to like in college. I still remembered. And I read. Dad, I read the letter you left on the door. At that moment, I couldn't believe it. Not because the house was sold, but because you did it without needing my blessing. You used to always ask for my opinion on everything. You always let me decide, from where to study, where to get married, to moving back in with you. I got used to that. And then, I took it for granted that you would always be there, always available, always silently sacrificing. I don't know when I changed. Maybe it was when Ethan lost his job and I still tried to maintain the image of a perfect family. Maybe it was when I started to think, Dad's old, he won't know any better. But perhaps it was a long, long time ago when I started to take love for granted. You don't have to forgive me, because I haven't found the courage to forgive myself yet. I just want you to know, I reread the letter I wrote when I was 9, and I cried. I sat still, my hand resting on the edge of the paper. This wasn't an excuse. It wasn't an attempt to fix things. This was the voice of someone who had finally realized they were no longer at the center of someone else's universe, and was now facing that void. I stood up. I opened the wooden cabinet in the corner of the room, the only piece of furniture I brought from the old house. In the top drawer was the keepsake box, Anna's unfinished wool scarf, her cookbook, and a crayon drawing of a woman with brown hair in an apron with the wobbly words underneath. Mom is the most beautiful. I placed Claire's letter inside, right next to that drawing. Then I closed the lid of the box very gently. I didn't write back. I didn't send a text. I didn't pick up the phone. Because some lessons, if forgiven too soon, are never truly learned. And some silences must last long enough for the voice of remorse to be heard. I stepped out onto the balcony. The weather was turning to autumn. The wind was cool, carrying the scent of dry leaves and baked goods from the nearby shop. I don't know what Claire will do next. Maybe she will never write again. Maybe one day she will knock on my door with different eyes. Or maybe it will take her years to find the courage to come back. But I am different now. I no longer live on the illusion that children will understand their parents at just the right time. I only live by this certainty. I did not lose myself. And if one day Claire is mature enough to return, the door I leave open will be a door of self-respect, not unconditional sacrifice. If you've ever been the one who suffers in silence, only to one day have to stand up and protect yourself, then perhaps you understand how the father in this story felt. Hit the like button if you can relate, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the stories to come. What do you think would be fair in this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're ready for another strike back, click on the video to your left to hear the next story.